Our guest is Dennis King, and he is with Harley, Ellis, Devereaux, which is out of the Detroit area, but there are actually you have 5 different centers, right? 3 in the California area.
Right, one in Chicago and our office here in Detroit, which is still the largest of our offices, was the original office and the largest of our 5 offices.
105-year-old architecture firm, Damian Farrell with Damian on Design on the Lucy Ann Land Show. You're listening to 1290 WLBY. What an interesting history. Those houses that were all mansions,
yeah.
all built within the same time frame. Are they distinctly different, or are there similar architectural elements to them?
They are. There is some differences amongst them. Each has a different character, dependent upon the interest and style of both the owners and the architects that were designing them.
So the Scripps has a Tudor feel to it,
right?
And then having done the program on Cranbrook, Condon was actually doing around the same time. Obviously, it doesn't match these as far as size and so on, but that had a distinctly English arts and crafts emphasis to it of his own house. And then I'm not sure how you would describe Meadowbrook, but actually, there's a lot of Tudor in that too, isn't there?
Yeah,
it's more spectacular brickwork.
It's more of the Scripps Mansion. Another term was used as Norman style, which is sort of interchangeable to a certain degree with Tudor. The Meadowbrook Hall is much more of an English country.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? With its multiple chimneys.
Right, exactly.
Tell me about sculptor Marshall Frederick in relationship to all of this.
Marshall Fredericks was a favorite sculptor of architect Clarence Day, who was the designer of the Scripps Mansion. And when Clarence Day joined Harley and Ellington, and the firm became known as Harley, Ellington and Day, they did a significant number of very noteworthy buildings. Nationally, they did the State Department building in Washington, D.C., and in the courtyard there is a Marshall Fredericks sculpture. Marshall Fredericks lived in Royal Oak, Michigan, so he was a local guy. The Rackham Memorial Building in the New Center area in Detroit was a Harley, Ellington and Day design building, and it is emblazoned with Marshall Fredericks sculptures all over it. The City County building,
Detroit, right.
Downtown now, the Coleman Young Municipal Building, the Spirit of Detroit in front. The building is a Harley, Ellington and Day design building. The Spirit of Detroit is a Marshall Fredericks sculpture sitting in front of the building.
And our U of M Stadium, our Eagle, is a Marshall Fredericks.
So that ties it in even more so.
He was quite a well-known and highly appreciated sculptor, and his practice mirrored that of our firm for many, many years.
What would he have thought about the jerseys being put on the Spirit of Detroit?
Good question.
I think that he probably I forget exactly. He died about 10 years ago.
Oh, so he probably saw that.
So I think that he had an opportunity to see that, and I'm sure he was pleased in a way to see that.
In your 105 years, Harley, Ellis, and Devereaux, and its various incarnations and different architects that have come through its doors, the styles that we've seen throughout the years, I love like the Scripps Mansion and all of these beautiful old style, but today, of course, we're doing much more modern and sleeker designs. Do you think we'll ever see that come back from the 20s and 30s?
Good question.
No, I don't. I think today, regardless of individual style, most architects tend to design according to contemporary times, using contemporary materials, contemporary forms, exploration of what's possible with today's materials. All of these mansions obviously were built out of masonry, brick, and stone, and that's still probably one of the most favorite building materials for architects today. So to that extent, we explore contemporary uses of masonry. But I think that most architects today tend to look towards the future rather than the past.
Yeah, I would agree. I think you see buildings that I think in some sense pretend to reach towards some of these mansions in their style, but they're on a much smaller scale, and they try to incorporate some of the grand, the two-story entrances. But I think, unfortunately, the proportions and so on have been translated in a very unfortunate way. You tend to find them, in my experience, in subdivisions and out of plan books and so on.
I can't imagine what it's like to be an architect today, and I want to illustrate this with a local problem we're having right now.
Yeah.
And that is what is going on with the city of Ann Arbor. The A2D2 design guidelines that
Yes.
had been created a few years ago, now coming into question, and the possibility of a moratorium being put on future development in downtown Ann Arbor. All surrounding, it seems anyway, over one particular property, 413 East Huron, which has received, well, there's been a vocal minority, I think, who have created quite a stir.
Yeah, boy, you just lit a flame for me.
Yeah. We don't have to necessarily talk about it in particulars to Ann Arbor, but this notion that design now today, it's not just the materials that are available, is it? It's a sense of what people consider to be right for the area, for the other architecture that's surrounding it. There's.
Yeah, I think there is a very fortunate focus coming back, which is what urban environments are like, and how people use and take advantage of their downtowns in particular. One of my great rails over the years was complaints about traffic engineers who would strip out parking and widen roads so that cars could move quickly through downtowns. And unfortunately, I think it had a lot to do with a lot of downtown areas falling on very hard times.
Those highways really cut.
Right.
They were just knives, cleavers that just went right through cities and created blighted areas either side. And,
so today, you now find downtowns that are trying to rebuild themselves, narrowing the streets, putting parking back on the street, and making traffic slow down so that people can look at shop windows and look at their friends walking down the street. So that notion about how architecture enriches life, how it I think it was Winston Churchill with the great expression, we form our buildings and thereafter they form us. I probably have destroyed the quote
that's
in some way, but
yeah.
but I think is very, very true. And taking advantage of what architectural environments can do for people working, living, learning, seeking medical attention is very, very important. And that is a real important factor in everything that is designed today, is how is it going to impact the users of the facility.
How do you feel when a certain design is created, like a 413 East Huron, that some people feel is not right for that particular neighborhood? Or the thing that strikes me the most about that particular conversation here locally is the city of Ann Arbor built its own municipal center, which is a rather hulking, structure compared to the landscape, the footprint of where it's at, but that was the city doing it itself. So how do you make sense out of all of this, Damian?
I think we always, as architects, we throw ourselves in the lion's den as far as critique is concerned on the aesthetics of our buildings. And generally, from each of our perspectives, there is a strong logic and reasoning and purpose. I don't know if you'd agree. So we work with our clients and for our clients, and the responses come out of site program, brief, those kinds of things. So, and then there are the moments where and I think we should as architects stretch our wings, flex our muscles a little bit from an aesthetic point of view, look into new materials, look what's going on, and try to push things.
Yeah, there is an opinion about zoning that I've had for a long, long time. Zoning is obviously necessary, otherwise we would have unfortunate uses next to positive uses.
We'd be like Houston, where
Yeah,
there is no
exactly.
zoning. Yeah.
So zoning is good, but in an effort to try to commit to writing something that would be a good guideline, I think it has gone too far. And the sense is that in any area, everything has to be the same. And I think you would find that that does not lead to great conducive environmental uses. It's good to have some high-density use next to some lower-density use, a pocket park, some retail, a mixture of different kinds of environments together. That makes more interest in the environment. I think it actually allows the architecture to be a little more interesting.
A little bit more creative,
And more creative.
not being so constrained.
The notion that everything in an area has to be constrained so that it looks the same is not something that I think is a well-placed concept.
Dennis King, he is from one of the 150 largest design firms in the country, Harley, Ellis, Devereaux, and Damian Farrell from Damian Farrell Design Group here in Ann Arbor. The next 100 years is going to be interesting for your firm.
I look forward to my partners and how they will handle that.
You are transitioning out.
I am.
You were CEO for many years and
I
then
served.
COO recently
Right.
and now retiring?
All right, 20 years as CEO, transitioned over the last 3 years, and in 2 months I'll be retiring, trying to figure out what my next career will be.
We're not letting him go on the Michigan Architectural Foundation, where he's truly been a real stalwart. Dennis's work for the MAF has been amazing. I don't know how long you've been on the board, a lot longer than I have, obviously, but your impact and your influence and getting the board current as far as social media is concerned, but also the recruitment of appropriate members and so on. Dennis has been a foundation, literally, pardon the pun, of the Michigan Architectural Foundation.
That's wonderful. And your firm, of course, there are very few out there that can make the acclaim of being more than 100 years old.
When we celebrated our centennial 5 years ago, we actually took a look nationally, and there was only about 20 firms in the entire country that were 100 years old. So there's probably a few more that have been added to the list over the last 5 years.
And I think we have, am I right that we have 3 of them here?
Yeah, Albert Kahn,
and
Smith Henchman
Smith
and Grills,
Henchman.
or Smith Group, and
No.
our firm.
Alan Cobb's coming in next week.
Oh,
Next
great.
week's show, and I'm trying to get Carl Rowling to come the following week.
Excellent.
So we will have all 3 of our contributors from our Michigan, our state of design, as we build this collection.
Well, looking at larger firms, you have an attitude of being a caretaker.
Yeah.
The firm, because you're not there when it started, and you won't be there when it ends.
That's right.
You're
Yeah.
really responsible to be a caretaker for the firm and help it grow and develop and prosper and become better, and as you turn it over to the next generation of leaders. And that's what I've tried to do during my time.
See, I think, we need a reality show about architects in that role, because, with the popularity of Downton Abbey right now, Harley, Ellis, Devereaux would be a great film, don't you think? Or
Yes,
Smith Group or something
definitely.
like that. We mix them all together,
Right.
and all the intricacies of the upper and lower, and, because, the Earl, I forget his name now, who has Downton Abbey,
Yes.
the actual Abbey, he has that same thing, he's just a caretaker for a while. So I think we
Right.
need an architecture, either that or a facility for recovering architects
Yeah.
next to the Scripps Mansion.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. Great talking with you today on
Thank
Damian
you.
on Design. Our special guest
Thank you,
today,
Dennis, very
Dennis
much.
King, with Harley, Ellis, Devereaux, and of course Damian Farrell from Damian Farrell Design Group here in Ann Arbor. And it's Damian on Design each week, and for the next several weeks, this is the 3rd installment of our Michigan as a State of Design on the Lucy Ann Lance Show. We are Ann Arbor's talk station, 1290 WLBY.